Hi you guys, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about some quirky British conspiracy theories. And there are quite a few conspiracy theories that you might have encountered in your time, but are they British? And are they as unnerving and unsettling as some of the ones that I'm going to give to you today? So there are 5 that we're going to look at. There were a few others that we're going to include, but I think I might put them aside for a video for another time, so stay tuned for that one. And these are a little bit eerie, bizarre, and some are just genuinely unsettling. So let's get to it. Let's look at some quirky British conspiracy theories. So, Britain is known for tea drinking, queuing, and apparently some very quirky conspiracy theories that might make you squint cool. So, some of them are mysterious and are related to espionage and spying. Some are linked to powerful institutions, which makes them pretty creepy. And some of them are linked to driving through woods in the middle of the night and encountering things that might appear innocent at first. I was a little sausage. And I forgot to include the title of one of our theories was the Princess Diana conspiracy theory. So this is going to be a little awkward add-in before we get into the main video. Sorry, guys. So the main factors in the Princess Diana death conspiracy theory. So as I've said, on August 31st, 1997, Princess Diana and her partner Dodi Fayed left a hotel in Paris and entered a car which was driven by Henry Paul, and they all died in a high-speed car chase in a tunnel in Paris, and they were being pursued by paparazzi. The investigation that came out of it, one in 1999 and one in 2006, concluded, both of them, that it was a tragic accident. It was a death due to dangerous driving and the pursuit of the paparazzi behind the vehicle. And this was due to Henry Paul being intoxicated. So again, a bit random that he was found to be drunk, even though his job is a driver, and he was driving at an excessive speed. And another interesting factor in this is that the Dodi and Diana themselves were not wearing seatbelts in the car. So, believe it or not, seatbelts have been a legal requirement here in the UK since the 1980s. So, by this point, a good 17 years in, people had been used to wearing a seatbelt. So, for them to not to buckle up seems a little unusual, especially seeing as they were in a high speed car chase. You probably would be making sure that you were in the car and they were comfortably strapped in. But again, who knows exactly what was going on or what the energy was inside that vehicle under pursuit. So, why do these conspiracy theories, even though it has been judged to be a tragic accident, why do these conspiracy theories persist? Well, despite official findings, they persist because of, lots of factors. So the first one is the royal family itself, and that the establishment wanted to prevent Diana, a divorced and controversial figure, from marrying Dodi Al Fayed, who was actually an Egyptian Muslim, and from having a child with him, because she was still only in her late 30s. So this would have been something she would have been able to do. Dodi himself hadn't got any children, as far as I know. So to remarry and have a child might be a bit of an embarrassment for the royal family, which I don't really understand, because I don't think the 90s was that backwards from what I remember. And certainly know that lots of people were getting married and having children in second marriages. So, but maybe it was considered, because we said about having the royal family on kind of a high pedestal, to be a controversial thing to happen. Number 2, in terms of firing the allegation of conspiracy fires, is the MI6, British intelligence, and they were acting on orders from the top. Not entirely sure who the people at the top are, and they orchestrated the crash to eliminate Diana because actually of her activism and her popularity. She was a really loved member of the royal family. She was beloved, and we saw this outpouring after her death. I mean, there was an immense period of mourning here in the UK. Many people were absolutely devastated. I remember watching the funeral and my dad crying. So, it genuinely was felt as a tragic loss, not just to the immediate family themselves and Harry and William, but actually the British people felt this sense of loss as well. And she'd been a big part of the media and a big part of the royal family for almost 20 years at this point. And that maybe her popularity and her activism, she was into like child, landmines and war zones and damaging civilians in conflicts. She was looking, out for orphans. She was looking out for people who'd struggled in the AIDS, crisis of the 1980s and early 1990s. She was seen as like a role model. She would often sort of stand up for kind of more controversial areas. She was a humanitarian. So perhaps this warmth and gregariousness that she had was perceived to be threatening, and therefore senior people felt that it was going to threaten the monarchy and the government, and that she needed to be removed. Although I can't really get on board with that. I just don't think that. I think they're more likely to utilize and manipulate her than they would be to kill her. But who am I? I'm just a regular person thinking over these things. And that maybe it was even further afield than that, and that it was the CIA, so the American Central Intelligence Agency, or even the Illuminati, whoever they might be. Broader and more vague theories suggest shadowy global elites were threatened by humanitarian work. As I said, her campaigns against landmines, and it kind of didn't fit in with that agenda and how they wanted the status quo of the world to be. So again, are some of these far-fetched? Are some of these very accurate? Obviously, that's up to you to make your mind up on that. So what is the evidence to support conspiracy theory? So we've looked at some of the reasons behind it. Well, there was a mysterious white Fiat Uno that was seen at the entrance of the tunnel and then seemed to disappear shortly after, and nobody was ever found to have been in proximity to the accident or to have claimed knowledge of that car. Even though it was seen to be there at the time. So again, is that because it was some kind of spy or espionage person that was involved in this? And theorists believe it may have actually forced Diana's car to crash. It might have been the reason for it. Maybe it was pulling out. I don't know. You'll have to do a bit more research into it if you're interested. The fact that Henry Paul, the driver, was actually maybe a paid asset of the intelligence agencies, and that he did it on purpose, obviously risking his own life, or that he was deliberately intoxicated as part of the plot. So, whether he took the alcohol or drugs through ingesting them, or whether they were spiked, again, nobody really knows. There were flashing lights in the tunnel, apparently, and theories suggest that witnesses reported seeing a bright flash in the tunnel before the crash, and this is speculated to be strobe lighting that might have caused distraction and loss of concentration to disorientate the driver and therefore ensure that a crash happened. Again, along with the fact that they weren't wearing seatbelts, this would have been, and they were going at a very extreme speed in a built-up and enclosed area, certainly would have made that drive a lot more risky and dangerous. And then this one is a bit creepy, is that Diana herself had predicted that she would be killed in a car accident and that it would be made to look like an accident. This was a very big fear of hers. And then to have that act out as a premonition is quite creepy and quite unnerving. There's also a factor of some missing evidence, and this is actually in one of our later videos or later topics on conspiracy theories that we're going to look at. That evidence was suppressed or ignored to cover up the truth by the powers that be. So again, that's up to you to make your decisions on this. As we said, that the investigation did prove that it was a tragic and accident, unlawful killing due to gross negligence of the driver and the pursuing paparazzi, but that there is no evidence of a murder conspiracy. So it's all hearsay. It's all people like thinking outside of the box here and coming up with their own theories. So while the official story is one of a tragic accident caused by a drunk driver and the paparazzi, the persistent conspiracy theories reflect the immense public love of Diana. As I mentioned, there was massive outpouring, a deep distrust of institutional powers like the government, like the monarchy, maybe, the Illuminati, people like that. And there are still many unanswered questions. And I think that air of mystery about these questions perhaps adds to that conspiracy theory vibe. So our next conspiracy theory is spy in the bag. And this relates to Gareth Williams, who worked for MI6. And in August of 2010, he was found in a zip-up bag dead. So what happened there? So basically, the phrase "dead men don't talk" spy cases refers to unsolved death of Gareth Williams. He was a Welsh mathematician, so obviously pretty clever, and an MI6 operative, which means obviously he worked for British intelligence and made him a bit of a spy. And he was found dead in a padlocked hold all in his own London flat in August of 2010. So this is pretty grim and pretty harrowing. His death remains suspicious. The coroner ruled it unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. So that means that somebody had acted in a criminal way in order for him to have ended up dead in a bag that was padlocked. I mean, he's not going to put himself in there, is he? While a subsequent Metropolitan Police investigation concluded that it was probably an accident. Did he trap himself in the bag? He couldn't get out? I don't know. And this is why it's a conspiracy theory. And this is why it's in this video. So the difficulty in definitively explaining the circumstances of his death highlights the secrecy surrounding his work and the difficulties that led to in the investigation. He didn't actually talk a lot about his work with his friends and family because he wouldn't be able to, because it wasn't like he was going to come home and go, hey, guess what happened today, guys? And spreading secrets of national intelligence. He wouldn't have been able to do that. So obviously his work was shrouded in mystery and therefore made him more of a vulnerable person and potentially a target due to the nature of his work. And it is, working in the intelligence world. I'm sure there's lots of things. We've all seen spooks, I'm sure. We've all seen spy, films. And, there's a degree of risk with this kind of profession. However, there is a lot of secrecy and a lack of information around this. And William's family and friends confirmed that he never spoke about his work, as I've said earlier. And the lack of communication fueled speculation and made investigating very, very challenging. And the inability to investigate directly due to its classified nature meant that key aspects of his death have remained a mystery. And the police's eventual conclusion that the death was an accident, well, again, the family aren't going to buy that, and I don't think I would if that was my family member. Is this an attempt by the establishment to close the case without exposing sensitive intelligence secrets? Was he murdered by an enemy of the state? Did somebody want him quiet and therefore want him dead? There are so many questions around this. And, as we said, dead men don't talk, do they? So obviously this is very much linked to some kind of issue of national security and vulnerability. And therefore maybe the establishment, maybe some other dark force felt that it was time to end this man's life, and therefore the threat of any national security secrets or other intelligence related secrets from ever seeing the light of day. So this one is creepy. This one is unnerving. It's just a regular person or somebody that has been tapping into something that maybe we don't really need to know about. Either way, it's creepy, it's scary, and I certainly don't like it. So another theory, which I think is the most unnerving and creepy theory, and this is linked to VIP cover-ups. So I've sort of heard a bit around this one. And it's linked to Parliament and British politicians, and is linked to child abuse and a circle of child assault offenders. That's the phrase I'm going to use. Obviously, feel free to use the correct word here. Abusing young children in the Houses of Parliament. So senior, respected, voted MPs who in the 1980s were molesting and harming children. This is, the establishment having massive skeletons in the closet. And this has tried not to stay hidden. And I've seen a couple of victims who I've seen give accounts. I've heard of MPs whose names have been linked with this sort of child sex trafficking ring in the Houses of Parliament. And I've heard a few things, but it's never really been very explicitly covered. So basically, what are the main details of this? So back in 1984, an MP named Geoffrey Dickens put together a secret file naming powerful people in the government linked to child abuse, and he gave it to the Home Office. So in this case, he's a bit of a whistleblower. And the Home Office is the government department in charge of law and order for the country. And the mystery surrounding this, and therefore fueling the conspiracy theory, is that the dossier, along with over 100 other files on child abuse, vanished. No one knows, interestingly, where they went. Where did it go? One wonders. And the investigation, decades later in 2014, people demanded answers, especially in the light of like Jimmy Savile and some very creepy things that have come to pass in the news in the last decade or so. So the government launched a huge public inquiry to find out what happened and how these abuse allegations were handled, like what's gone on here. So 20 years later, they were shining the light on this and realizing that this should have been investigated more thoroughly and in more detail. However, there was a lot of drama involved in this inquiry, and it had a very rocky start. So the first chairperson was Baroness Butler Slosh. She stepped down. Why did she step down? I'm not sure, but could this have something to do with threats or intimidation? Who knows? This is a conspiracy theory video. And then the next chair, Fiona Woolf, also resigned. So is this because too many home truths were going to come out? Is it because too many big people, big names were involved? Was it just harrowing having access to this investigation? Again, not entirely sure, but that's the second person that stepped down. And then finally, a third chair, Justice Lowell Goddard, was appointed, but she also quit in 2016. So a third person quit the inquiry and the investigation, which I think is quite unusual. Do you not think? Things happen in threes, and to lose the lead of the investigation 3 times seems somewhat careless. And the bottom line is it was a major government investigation into organised, arranged child abuse. And it was plagued by lost evidence and leadership problems, making it very difficult to get to the truth. So is this because the truth was too harrowing to find out? Is this because some powerful being does not want that truth to be known? Is it because it is too dangerous for this information to be out? I don't know. But either way, there's a mystery here and there's a conspiracy, and somebody knows something, but we aren't privy to that information. So why does this conspiracy theory matter? Well, it actually shows a historic failure to protect children and hold powerful people accountable, because we don't like holding powerful people accountable, because is that risk to us? Is that, intimidation and threats? And is that what it is? But people are only powerful if you give them power, and people are only powerful if you fear their power. If you take your own power, I mean, I don't know. I just think it's very sad and incredibly disheartening that there was a group of young children that experienced truly traumatic incidents in their, early life, and that there's been nobody held accountable. There is an MP that has been named in this. I'm not going to name him in this video, but obviously if you're interested, you can find this information quite clearly on the internet. But obviously it's a failure. Children are the most vulnerable group of people in our society, and to fail them and to have the government, MPs, people that are supposed to represent us and have our best needs at heart, as the perpetrators in this alleged crime, is really quite sad and quite disturbing. Not all of our conspiracy theories are linked to power and politics, you'll be happy to hear. Some are actually more myth and folklore and a little bit unusual. So let's lighten it up with some of the more odd or unusual mystery kind of conspiracy theories. So first of all, we're going to talk about a creepy legend, which is the black-eyed children of Cannock Chase. Now, I've been to Cannock Chase myself a few times. It's a beautiful place. Seen a lot of deers staggering around there. Been on a bike ride, been on a walk, but it's beautiful. So let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk about the setting of Cannock Chase. So what you need to know about Cannock Chase is that it's in Staffordshire, England. It's a large area of natural woodland and parkland. And despite its beauty, it actually has got a little bit of famously spooky reputation. I almost said that word. And is often called the UK's Bermuda Triangle. Ooh, that's exciting, isn't it? And it's a hotspot for reports of UFOs and strange lights, so unidentified flying objects, Bigfoot-like creatures. So there's this rumor of the Cannock Chase werewolf, and the Beast of Cannock Chase. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what the Beast of Cannock Chase is, but you know what? I know I don't want to meet them. Ghosts and poltergeists as well in this area give it that creepy vibe, and it makes it the perfect breeding ground for, you know, new legends and for myths to be established. So basically, it's a forest, like moory kind of piece of land. It's open, it's exposed, it's shrouded in woods and dark in different areas of it. And this is obviously a space that's been in existence for hundreds of years. There's lots of rumors and lots of mysterious things are attributed to it. So let's have a look at one of the things, which is the black-eyed children of Cannock Chase. So, the legend of the black-eyed children of Cannock Chase. So, you're driving through Cannock Chase on lonely roads at night, and you might see, oddly, a lone child, or even a pair of lone children, trying to flag down or standing eerily by the side of the road, which obviously is going to be concerning for you. So, if the driver stops, if you're that driver and you stop, the children will typically approach the car and ask for a ride or to get help to get home. Okay, obviously, that's perfectly normal. If you saw two children in the middle of a moorland or forest area, abandoned late at night, you would certainly want to help them. However, this is where the creepy bit comes in. These children often seem pale, nervous, and might be dressed in slightly old-fashioned clothing. And the creepiest twist of all is that when they get close enough, the driver sees that the child's eyes are completely solid black. So there's no white, no iris, no pupil, just a solid black eye, just jet black. That is creepy. That is scary. I do not like that. And the encounter is always accompanied by an overwhelming sense of dread, fear, and primal feeling that something is very wrong, something is very off. So a heightened sense of fear and intensity when these children approach and get close. So the children are often described as being strangely persuasive. So obviously having some kind of influence over the driver of the car, and almost as if they're trying to use a form of compulsion to get into your car. However, what is the best course of action? The wise move, according to the legend, is to drive away immediately without letting them in, because I have a feeling that if you let them in, something bad's going to happen. So, creepy, scary, haunting, definitely. So why is it a popular story? So why has it made it onto our conspiracy theory list? It's quite relatable, isn't it? The idea of seeing a vulnerable child and the moral dilemma of whether to stop and help is powerful. As I've said, if you see children alone on the side of the road in the middle of the night, then you are going to help them. You know, where have they come from? Why are they here? Why are they alone? Where are their caregivers? And it's simple and scary because it's a core image, isn't it? The familiar human form, small, innocent children with something fundamentally wrong with them. So they look normal until you get up close and you realize that those big black eyes are kind of creepy. And eyes are important, aren't they? Eyes are important to communicate feelings. Our pupils widen, don't they, when we see something we're attracted to? if we feel sad, our eyes can express that. When we're happy, our eyes can express that. But to have a black eye, a solid black eye, it's unusual and almost alien-like. So it's definitely really kind of, effective in terms of the horror trope, isn't it? So, creepy. It taps into modern anxiety as well, and there's a lot of that around here in the 21st century. So it plays into that old fear of stopping for strangers, especially in isolated places, occurrences that seem slightly normal but actually are slightly out of the ordinary. It's just slightly creepy enough to, be a little unorthodox. But actually, it's a domestically familiar situation that, isn't completely out of the realms of normality. And it is rooted in a real place. The pre-existing folklore of Cannock Chase gives the story a sense of place and history, and it makes it feel more credible. If you go walking through Cannock Chase at night, it's creepy. If you go walking through Cannock Chase on your own in the middle of the day, it might be a little bit creepy. It's lonely and it's isolated. It's away from civilization, and therefore this setting itself lends itself to this feeling and this story. So what's important to, include here is that there are no verified reports or evidence of these encounters. As I said, this is a myth or a folklore. This story exists purely in the realms of modern folklore and local legend. And is it a campfire tale designed to send a chill down your spine? Or is it to teach us a moral lesson? Because a lot of our myths are there to teach lessons. To, not pry into things that we don't know too much about, to be, not everything as it seems, to not trust everything, to follow our gut instincts. Obviously, there is some kind of hidden message here that we need to sort of take on board. But either way, if I drive through Cannock Chase anytime soon and I see two children or a child on the edge of the road, I'm just going to drive past and wave as quickly as I can and maybe call the police and tell them that I've just seen a creepy child on the side of the road and let them deal with it, because they are far more trained to handle these incidents than I am. So our last video then is the beast of Bodmin Moor. So a beast. Obviously, there's a couple of weird stories, and we've just referenced Cannock Chase there and the idea that there might be a beast roaming around there. But this is a story of Britain's very own mysterious big cat, a legendary predator that stalks the wilds of Cornwall. So basically, the beast of Bodmin Moor is a phantom big cat, and there's lots of stories about phantom big cats in the UK. In fact, I saw on Instagram not long ago that the school locked down because it thought it had a large predatory wildcat, and it just turned out to be a freaking massive ginger cat. So I love that. It's kind of hilarious. So the Bodmin Moor big cat is a bit like a panther or a puma or a leopard, and it's reportedly been seen roaming the wild and remote Bodmin Moor in Cornwall, UK. So it kind of has similar typical features, doesn't it? Lonely, isolated place. And then something that is kind of familiar in terms of animal, but the type of animal is a bit unusual and not natural to the environment, which gives it that creepy or freaky kind of vibe to it. So basically, it's sightings of this that have led to this conspiracy theory or this myth or folklore. And for decades, people have claimed to see a large cat-like creature, often black, powerful, and with glowing eyes. So obviously there's something about walking around moors and heaths and forests and glowing or black-eyed creatures looming around. And it's slinking through the misty landscape. I mean, cats are just cute, aren't they? And I can't help it. If I saw a big cat walking around on Bodmin Moor, I'd be tempted to give it a little hug and see if it purrs. Probably would also kill me, but cats are cute, and you're not going to change my mind about that. So what's the evidence of this? So over the years, legend has been fueled by blurry photos. In this day and age, we have iPhones and Android phones with super cameras on, and the cameras now are so amazing that you can take fantastic shots. I mean, I remember early digital cameras, and interestingly, some of the pictures that I've got on my Facebook, which I've been on for a very long time, some of those early noughties photos I've uploaded are a bit pixelated now, and are kind of being corroded because the digital like photo is itself, not up to spec because the cameras now are way more sophisticated. Anyway, that's a completely different subject. But these photos are blurry and videos of large black animal in the distance. So we never seem to be able to zoom in or be close enough, or it's not getting close enough to get a good capture on it. There are mysterious carcasses of livestock, like sheep, that appear to have been killed by a large predator. So obviously this beast is hungry and is feeding on the local animal life and livestock. The discovery of large cat-like paw prints. So there are places on Bodmin Moor where large cat paw prints have featured. So this cat is slinking around, hidden away, scoffing on sheep, but leaving his little cat footprints around. And the most famous piece of evidence comes from 1995 when a skull was found that looked like that of a big cat. However, experts identified it as a skull from a leopard skin rug that had been modified. So again, is this kind of leopard skin rug carcass the reason why this conspiracy theory has been allowed to kind of roam freely, pun intended, for such a long time? So again, if you live near Bodmin Moor, what's your take on this? Do you have any experiences? Have you seen a big, large cat roaming around? Has somebody been eating your sheep? Have you got some cat prints in the back of the garden that doesn't look like it belongs to Tiddles next door? It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on this. So yeah, the Beast of Bodmin Moor. The UK government decided to investigate this in 1995, and their official report from the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries and Food concluded there was no conclusive proof that big cats were living on the moor. So there's no clear, conclusive evidence that we can draw solid conclusions from. There was no native population of big cats known in the area or to be breeding in the area. So where's this big cat come from? They're not indigenous to the United Kingdom. It's more domestic cats. So how's it ended up here? However, they could not rule out the possibility that one or a few individual animals could have been released into the wild and survived for a time. So does this mean some kind of creepy zoo is lost, I don't know, its panther, and it's actually roaming around in this moor and it's able to hide because it's a lonely, isolated place and it's got access to food and snacks, and actually it's living its best life over on Bodmin Moor? So what are the theories behind this? So there are a few main theories on what it could be. There's the escaped animal theory, which I kind of just hinted at. And this is the most popular theory. So before the 1976 Dangerous Animals Act, it was easier for private collectors to own exotic animals. So someone in the past has purchased an exotic animal, and it's highly plausible that some of the owners have released the big cats into the wild when they could no longer care for them, because are you going to ring up the RSPCA and be like, hey, I've got a large panther in my back garden, can you come and take it in? Or, are you going to let it roam around? I mean, to be fair, wouldn't the decent thing be to alert some authority that you can no longer look after it and see if you could get it donated to a zoo? Well, maybe somebody didn't have that brain power and decided to let their exotic pet go, or maybe their exotic pet escaped. 2, the mass hysteria, mistaken identity theory. Oh, I love a bit of mass hysteria. That's where everybody gets worked up and everybody thinks they've seen the same thing and starts responding, accordingly. And mistaken identity is where we think we've seen something, but actually it wasn't, but we believe it was. Because it's what makes sense or fits into our own story of the experience. So many sightings could actually be domestic cats. So link back to that bit I said about that school that had a lockdown because it thought it had a large gingery animal, and it actually turned out to be a domestic cat that was just very oversized. So these could be large domestic cats or dogs or wild animals like badgers that are seen in poor light or obscured in some way because they're standing next to a rock or shade of tree or something, or foggy conditions. And the power of suggestion means that people see what they expect to see. So they're not seeing the badger, they're not seeing the large Labrador, they're actually going to see a large black cat. And then there's the outright hoax theory that actually this is all a hoax. There is no wild animal. Somebody's going around there and leaving evidence. Like the famous skull was put there on purpose, but actually we know that that is a former rug. And has been proven to be fake, leading some to believe that the entire phenomenon is a clever hoax. Someone's going around putting those cat paws in. Someone's going around and letting their dog eat the sheep and then letting it be passed off as something else. Or is it actually, finally, a local myth that encourages tourism? I mean, are you watching this video right now wanting to go to Bodmin Moor so you can go and see if this is true? Are you going to see a cat? A large black cat? I don't know. So in short, the Beast of Bodmin Moor is a classic British conspiracy theory and a big mystery. I mean, we don't know. Is there a cat? Is there not a cat? Is it a hoax? Who knows? So while there's no definitive proof of breeding of an animal population exists, the countless sightings and the possibility of escaped pets keep the legend alive. I mean, maybe there is a former exotic animal that's bred with something and it's roaming around. And it's a perfect blend of local folklore, a spooky setting, and a genuine mystery. And quite frankly, aren't those the three ingredients that make for a pretty awesome, conspiracy theory? Okay, I suppose we're going to wrap it up there. So, what do you think? Are these just spooky stories? Is this power and manipulation gone wrong in our establishment? Are these large, big cats? Are these just rogue children that have had too many screens and need an early night? Who knows? Or is Britain hiding something far scarier than bad weather? I'll leave that up for you to make a decision. So which was your favourite? Do you believe these theories? Have you heard of any of these theories before? Which do you think is the least believable theory? And are there any conspiracy theories that you'd like me to cover, or conspiracy theories that you know that you think might be of interest to share? If you do have some, let me know and I'll try and cover them for our next conspiracy video. So stay curious, stay weird, and don't trust children in Cannock. Haha. Anyway, that's all for me today. Ta-ta for now. I'll see you next time. Bye.